Hey everyone, welcome to a new segment I'm calling Q&A with Drybear, and basically what I've done here is collect questions strewn across my videos and my channel comments as well that you the viewers have asked. What I'd like for you to do is, if you like this segment and would like me to continue answering questions in this format, go ahead and put your questions down below in the comment section, as I will be using these videos as a pool for questions when I make new ones. The questions can be about anything like the game Smite, me personally, or any technical questions that you may have. Volk Mendaro asks, what programs do you use to make the movies? Well, this is something that it was a big obstacle for me when I was trying to get started in making videos and making my YouTube channel. And there's a lot of softwares out there to use. It's kind of comes down to personal preference, but also experience is something that you enjoy using. For video recording, I like using Fraps. They have a free trial, but I actually bought the software. It's pretty cheap, and it's something that's very effective for what it's used for. And there's a lot of people that use Fraps, so there's a big community that you can ask questions to if you run into any problems or anything like that, technical issues. So I really like using Fraps for video recording, and you can also use Fraps for audio recording as well. And that's how I do my gameplay commentaries. Is I set Fraps to record my voice from my microphone while I play the game. It's something that's very easy and intuitive to use. For audio, I started out using Goldwave. It was a paid software that I bought, and it was actually not as good as the free software that I use now, which is called Audacity. It's something that I feel that a lot of YouTube video makers don't take advantage of, is the audio engineering aspect of making videos, is the ability to remove noise and sound and environmental effects in the videos that you make, and editing the audio that you do. For my spotlights, I like to script and edit the audio that I put in there, so it's very official, it's very professional, it's very, straight to the point and exactly what I want it to be in the spotlight, because I feel like the spotlight's like more of a short professional video than my gameplay commentaries, which is all freestyle. As well as this video, I haven't done any editing with this video, despite me removing any of the sound and environmental effects, like the humming of my computer, which you probably won't hear right now, or if I'm recording at night, you can hear the crickets outside. I'd like to remove that as well. For video editing, I like to use Sony Vegas Pro, and it's something that I started using kind of back when I was at school. But it's a really nice video editing software. It's something that a lot of people use, just like the Fraps. There's a big community for it. Like, if you have any problems, you can go on forums and you can find out answers to the problems that you have. And it's also very intuitive. I like the display that it has, the UI that it has, and the way you can edit videos is exactly like you would expect to edit the videos. When you want to do something, you kind of just intuitively do it as you would expect to do it, and it works out really nicely, and it's something that I'm comfortable with. Sinful Endon asks, if I bought gems, would that allow me to play the game? And the answer is absolutely. This is actually how I got into the closed beta of Smite in the first place. I heard about it on, I think, another website it was an advertisement for Smite. And I got really curious. I watched some videos, I watched some gameplay, I scoured YouTube, and I decided I wanted to play it, but I didn't have an access. So I actually spent some money to get some gems. And I think at the time the cheapest gem package was $8 for 400 gems, and this bought you either a skin for one of the gods or 2 gods itself. So I started out with about 7 gods. I think I bought 2 gods instead of buying a skin. And the cool thing about this is it's pretty cheap for $8 of gems. But it's also pretty cool because they're not going to wipe any of the accounts when they release the game. So any of the money I've spent up until now with skins and gods and stuff like that, that will stay when the game is released. So I'll always have those skins, I'll always have those gods, and there's no concern with me spending money now and losing it later. LinkenLorko asks, why did you take Takedown before Butcher Blades? And he's referring to my Bakasura gameplay commentary video, and he's referring to the early game of that video where I started out in the jungle by picking up an Eat Minion, and then I left the jungle and I went into the lane, and when I hit level 2 I picked up Takedown, which is Bakasura's leap, his escape mechanism. And the reason I did this is because I did an assessment of my kill potential, me and my laning partner, and the laning setup was me as Bakasura versus Ra and Kali, and my laning partner was Bastet. And basically how I felt was that we didn't have the initial offensive advantage they did. Bastet and Bakasura both have mid to late game scaling, but they're not very good in the early game. They kind of need more points, more farm. So I didn't feel like we could have gotten first blood. We could have killed them. I didn't think if it came down to a straight up fight that we would have won. So my initial reaction is to get defensive if I can't go offensive. You want to make sure you assess the advantages you have, the disadvantages you have. If you feel like you don't have an advantage, then go defensive. You never want to feed in the early game The laning phase is what paves the rest of the game, and you really want to make sure that you survive there. So since I didn't feel like we were going to get any kills, that I wanted to stay defensive and make sure I didn't die. So I picked up my leap as a defensive measure to make sure that I wouldn't feed, I wouldn't die, and I would be able to escape anything that came. Sasquatch428 asks, I was having trouble with upgrading the abilities because the F1 and F2 keys are too far up and make it awkward to upgrade in the middle of laning. My question is there a better setup for the key bindings, or should I just get used to how the bindings are set from the start? This is actually a really common question that I hear a lot, that people talk about in-game, out-of-game, on forums, all over the place. And the reason that the bindings are set the way they are is because in this game in Smite, it's unlike other MOBAs in the fact that it's third person and you're controlling your character with the WASD keys. In other MOBAs, you use the mouse for movement, and that leaves a lot of bindings available for you on the keyboard. But when you're forced to move with the WASD keys, that locks up some of the abilities. For example, in other MOBAs, it's generally common to have your abilities bound to Q, W, E, and R for your 1, 2, and 3, and 4 abilities. The problem is W is part of your movement, so you can't have Q, W, E, and R. So what they decided to do is they set the movement to WASD, and then they made the ability items to Q, E, and buttons around the WASD, and then they moved the abilities up to 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, this changes some of the things. I mean, in Dota 2, the way they do it is you have to push a button, and then that unlocks the skilling setting. And then when you push any of the abilities, that skills up that ability. In League of Legends, they do modifiers, they do control, plus the ability to upgrade it. And it's probably one of the more comfortable settings, but they were kind of at a challenge, from what I understand, to be able to put upgrades. What they did is they set up the F keys, which seemed like to be quite available. And I'm comfortable with it. I mean, I have kind of long fingers, and I've used to using the F buttons during gameplay, so it's not something that's a problem with me, but some people have a problem with it. I've been watching streamers and people making videos, and the settings that they have, I've seen people use numpad buttons. I've seen people use all kinds of keybinds. I saw someone who had WASD as their movement still, but for their abilities, they had Q, E, R, and F. So it's kind of around the WASD, and then for the ability items, they had 1, 2, and 3, and then they used the other number buttons for upgrading. So it's kind of personal preference how you want to handle it. So, I mean, you kind of have to get creative, but the main reason why it's set this way is because of the movement keys. So if you wanted to move the movement keys down one, or use the arrow keys, I mean, you couldn't really aim with a mouse. It's all personal preference. You kind of have to mess with it. There's no elegant answer at this point in time. Ratums5 asks, what do you normally go after Fatalis and Frostbound? And he's referring to my Bakasura gameplay video as well. I had a lot of questions on that video and like to include those. Item builds is something that's really, really popular with these kind of games. Everyone wants to know what item to get, when to get it, what skill to get, when to get it. And the thing is like when you're going and improving your skill level in these kinds of games, it's not always when do I get it or why do I get it. So this is a very difficult question to ask. I think that Frostbound is kind of key on Bakasura, and it's something that's really powerful on him, as well as Fatalis. He scales really well with movement speed and attack speed. After that, I like to continue getting attack speed on him, so like Chains, Blades, Execution, or anything like that. You can go for Lifesteal. I think the Soul Eater is really good. There's a lot of options, but it always comes down to what kind of game you're playing. If you need defensive items, then you need to get defensive items. You always need to ask yourself, do I need more damage? So you look at the enemy team, if they have like a really strong physical carry that's getting as much farm as you are, if you decide to go physical protection or any kind of defensive items and he goes damage, it's likely that he'll be able to out DPS you when it's in a straight up fight or in a team fight. So you need to make sure you know, okay, so is the enemy team going defensive? Do I need penetration now? Do I need defensive myself? You need to measure yourself against the enemy team and figure out what you're going to need. And this is something that takes a very long time to be able to understand and be able to ingrain in your own mind, be able to choose items. So this is something that's very difficult to answer, but I can tell you that I'm on my, I'm in progress with my Bakasura Spotlight video, which will probably be my next video that I post up here in the next few days. And then I'll post up my standard item build and you'll be able to answer that. I'll be able to answer that in that video as well. This next question was pulled from my Artemis Spotlight video. Zentenon asks, explain your item build. I usually build for attack speed up until Vengeful Assault makes it go to 2.5. And what he's referring to there is the attacks per second cap, which is set to 2.5 attacks per second. And Vengeful Assault is an ability for Artemis that increases her attack speed for a short duration. Then I start building either physical power or defense, depending on what I need. You seem to take a different route. Can you please explain? And Here's a question that I mean, if you're a physical damage dealer, a lot of people like to say, you know, if I'm going for hard damage, what should I build? And this is something that's very specific, and there's been some mathematical analysis that's gone into it. If you're not concerned about CCs, let's say you have a good tank and you have a good team with good support, you're just focused on doing as much damage as you possibly can. There's a delicate balance between attack speed and damage. So basically in the beginning of the game, it's usually more effective to get more damage to pack more punch in your attacks. But then when you have a certain amount of damage, it becomes less effective to get more damage versus getting more attack speed, because even though you may do more damage, the limiting factor to your overall damage output is your attack speed. If you're attacking too slow, more damage won't affect you as much as attacking more times in a certain amount of time. So there's this balance that comes between attack speed and damage. In general, most people like getting a damage item first and then immediately following up with an attack speed item. And then from there, it's basically what you need. There's more options than just damage and attack speed. There's on-hit effects like the Executioner that reduces physical protection. There's the Cheen's Blades that does a percentage of the enemy's health points, which is really effective for taking down tanks. So there's kind of this balance between that. For someone like Artemis who has a built-in attack speed modifier like Vengeful Assault, I don't really feel it's necessary to go for attack speed early on, since she does have that native attack speed. So I like going for pure damage, pure power in the early game. And maybe since she has this Vengeful Assault, I like going for 2 damage items and then going into attack speed and maxing that out. Because once you have a lot of damage, then getting really high attack speed really helps. But since she has that Vengeful Assault, I don't feel it's necessary to get attack speed right away. Just because if someone has high physical protection, if you have high attack speed, you're not gonna be able to penetrate that very easily, because you have a lot of little attacks that are being deflected very easily. So I would say build damage early on, and this is why there's a reason why I do that. And then I go for some attack speed, and sometimes I reach the cap, sometimes I don't. But I feel like because she has that Vengeful Assault ability, she doesn't have as pressing of a need to build attack speed as some of the other physical carries. I Like Music 212 asks, what's the blue arrow? And what he's referring to here is when you have the default settings in Smite, for ranged gods, there's this blue arrow that comes out of your character that shows the range of your basic attacks and also the direction they're going to go. So it really helps new players to aim their attacks. In some of the videos, I still had the blue arrow on. You can turn this off in the settings, and it's just there to let you know how far the attack's going to travel and help you aim it when you're shooting it. So it's kind of like this introductory setting. It's actually pretty nice for some situations, but after a good while of playing, you kind of get an idea of how far the attacks will travel and the direction they're going to go when you shoot them. So it's not as necessary, but that's exactly what that's for. It's for new players. The next question was pulled from my Zeus Spotlight video. Blitzter23 asks, why do you grab Warlocks Sash? Zeus isn't very good of a pusher, and it would be much better to rush Rod of Tahuti after you have Obsidian Shard. So my love for Warlocks Sash is basically the combination of having survivability with the HP that you get, plus the magic power and mana. So it makes you more stable, gives you more of a mana pool, HP pool, but also gives you power. And it's something that the longer you have it, when you finally get to stack it up, it becomes more effective. So the earlier you get it, the more it'll benefit you when the mid game hits. So it's something that I get on Zeus early on just because I like getting in people's faces and exchanging auto attacks so I can detonate charges and stuff like that. It's true, Zeus doesn't have much of a pushing power very early on. He needs 3 or 4, sometimes 5 points in his chain lightning before he can start clearing waves. And it's something that takes a while, but by the time you pick up the Warlock Sash, usually I finish my boots, or sometimes I pick up the Warlock Sash, but you won't get the Warlock Sash until the second or third time where you go back to base. Maybe the first time if you had a really good early game, but by this time you'll have enough points in your chain lightning where you can easily push, and then once you have that push, you can easily go to the side lanes or go to the mid lane or gank or go to the jungle and gank, and you get stacks really quickly by getting god kills, but also by pushing it. I think Zeus is excellent in the early to mid game once he has enough points, so I like to capitalize on that, and I like the Warlock Sash because it gives me enough survivability to do what I like doing. Items are a personal preference. I mean, if you don't have to get what I get, it's something that I do, something that I use. I feel like Zeus is easily targeted even with his Aegis shield, so I like having HP. But once you have that HP, it's very easy to go straight into damage right after that. So like I go Warlock Sash into penetration into Rod of Tahuti, or Warlock Sash right into Rod of Tahuti. So it's something that gives you the survivability, and that's the main reason why I get it. Well, that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully I didn't butcher anybody's names in this video, and also hopefully my answers were sufficient for the people who asked them, and also for those people who didn't even know they had the question on their tongue, but they liked the answer they got. And hopefully this video was very informative for anyone who's watching it. As always, go ahead and post any questions you have involving Smite or me, or technical questions or anything in general that I might be able to answer for you in the comment section below, and I'll be making new videos answering those. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.